Welcome to Pastor's Chat today. Well, we're going to finish Psalm 92, this beautiful psalm that anonymous psalmist wrote to celebrate the Sabbath, a song to be sung on the Sabbath, that one day a week that's set aside to remember who God is, to give Him thanks, to worship Him, to recognize that everything we have, all the power we have to do anything that we do comes from God, the sovereign God, the Most High God. Now, when you are a person who worships and recognizes the gifts of God, the sovereignty of God, the providential care of God in your life, you will be a worshiper. That's what the first verses are about. You'll also be someone who will be overcoming the powers of evil, those people that try to destroy you and take you down. And that's the verses in the middle of the chapter. Now, the last few verses here are a fact and a truth that when you trust God and you live for Him and you meditate on His Word and follow His precepts, you will be someone who flourishes. Now, interesting, as you look at the Bible in its entirety, it's a story of contrast. God uses contrast to help us understand the reality of life and the paths of life. There is a broad way that leads to death. There's a narrow way that leads to life. In the Garden of Eden, there was a tree of the knowledge of good and then the contrast and evil. We find in this chapter the wicked are like grass. They grow up, they flourish. I love that. In verse 7 it says, even the people of iniquity, the workers of iniquity flourish. That word there means to be conspicuous, to shine. And then in verses 12 and 13, we read about the righteous flourish, and the righteous flourish like a palm tree. The wicked flourish like green grass. In the morning it springs up, but by the time the sun hits it and it goes down and withers, it fades away. They look like, oh, they have everything going for them, but then how quickly they disappear. But not the righteous. The righteous person flourishes, it says in verse 12, like a palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. And so, compared to two trees that had tremendous value and still do in the Middle East, the palm tree for its fruit, and of course the cedar tree for its beauty and for its wood. And so the righteous flourish like the palm tree. Isn't that interesting? In Psalm chapter 1, it says, blessed is the man whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and in His law he meditates day and night, and he will be like a tree planted by the rivers of waters that brings forth his fruit in his season. His leaf shall not wither, and whatsoever he does will prosper. There it is. So you can either prosper and flourish as you recognize a sovereign God and follow His precepts, or you can fade away like a leaf that's only here for a short time. And so he says, those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. And that's not just one day a week. That's not just our lifetime, but that's flourish in the courts of our God for eternity. In verse 14, they shall still bear fruit in old age. They shall be fresh and flourishing. Don't you like that? 3 times the word flourish is used in these last verses, and they mean to be vigorous, to flourish richly. And then we find in verse 15, to declare that the Lord is upright, He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in Him. In other words, God always does that which is right and best for us, and we experience that righteousness when we follow Him and His precepts. Well, my friend, this is a great chapter to remind us that one day a week, that first day of the week for the believer today, Sunday, we set aside to make sure we remember who our God is and we trust Him. And when we do, we worship, we have a life that overcomes, and we flourish for the glory of God. Well, God bless you, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day.